gather in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
And the Lord be with you. Today we celebrate Laetare Sunday. It is pretty in pink Sunday. Couldn't find anything, so puce will have to do. Laetare means rejoice, and today we've got something to rejoice about. I'm going to give you some, not good news, unbelievable news. You know, they say if it's too good to be true, it's not true. Not this. This seems to be too good to be true, but it is so true. But the difficulty is we don't believe it. We don't believe how much we are loved by our God. We still think we need to earn it. That's a heresy. And so we begin every Mass by confessing our sins, our desire to be in control. We open up our hearts to receive the love and the grace of God.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus. But the Pharisees and scribes began to complain, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So to them Jesus addressed this parable. A man had 2 sons, and the younger son said to his father, "Father, give me the share of your estate that should come to me." So the father divided the property between them. After a few days, the younger son collected all of his belongings and set off to a distant country, where he squandered his inheritance on a life of dissipation. When he had freely spent everything, a severe famine struck the country, and he found himself in dire need. So he hired himself out as to one of the local citizens, who sent him to his farm to tend his swine. And he longed to eat his fill of the pods on which the swine fed, but nobody gave him any. Coming to his senses, he thought, "How many of my father's hired workers have more than enough food to eat? But here I am, dying from hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I shall say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Treat me as you would treat one of your hired workers.' So he got up and went back to his father. While he was still a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son.' But his father ordered his servants, 'Quickly bring the finest robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Take the fattened calf and slaughter it. Let us celebrate with a feast, because this son of mine was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.' Then the celebration began. Now the older son had been out in the field, and on his way back, as he neared the house, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He called one of the servants and asked what this might mean. The servant said to him, 'Your brother has returned, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf, because he has him back safe and sound.' He became angry, and when he refused to enter the house, his father came out and pleaded with him. He said to his father in reply, 'Look, all these years I served you, and not once did I disobey your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat to feast on with my friends. But when your son returns, who swallowed up your property with prostitutes, for him you slaughter the fattened calf.' He said to him, 'My son, you are here with me always. Everything I have is yours. But now we must celebrate and rejoice, because your brother was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
And the question is, Did he go in? Did he go inside the house? The question for us today is, are we going inside the house as well? By that I mean, are we going to dare to believe in the gospel? This is good news. You know, the word gospel means good news, but it is such good news that it's almost unbelievable. It's too good. We don't want it to be that good. As a matter of fact, we're so used to bad news. And the bad news is that God's up here, we're down here. If we don't obey every jot and tittle of the law, we are in big trouble. He's going to come down and get us, and therefore we better dance our dance. We better fulfill the law. We better do everything we're supposed to do, because when we're done, then we have earned our way to heaven. I'm afraid that's bad news, because no matter how hard we try, we're not going to get there. Today, Jesus is going to take that bad news and turn it on its ear. This indeed is Laetare Sunday. This is a day to rejoice. I hope that no one leaves this church today without some rejoicing in their heart by daring to believe the good news. And it's the best news. What is it? He wants us. And he wants us happy. And he wants us alive. The joy of God is the fullness of his creatures, fully alive, filled with life, filled with joy. That's his great desire for us. So much so that he is an active God. God isn't sitting on his throne and then we've got to work our way up to God. God is coming down, not just to meet us, but to call us. You know, the good news we've got today, the gospel we've got today is one of the three parables of lost and found. We've got the parable of the lost sheep, where the 99 are okay, but only one is lost, and he goes and he puts them on his shoulder and he brings them into his house. That really is true. I was in Israel a number of years ago, and they showed us an old house of Jesus' time, and the animals are right there. It was a form of primitive heating, but the animals are right there inside in the house. Now, when you're in the house, you're home. Oh, E.T., go home. When you're home, you're where you belong. And so they're in the house. The widow's already in the house who's lost her coin, and she searches for her dime. When she finds her dime, she spends $50 on a party because she found what was lost. Well, that's God searching for us, the hound of heaven. Today we've got this old ancient father who has just lost something precious to him, and he is actively waiting for him to come home, to get back inside of his house. And so Jesus tells us this marvelous story, and it's addressed to the Pharisees. And the reason it's addressed to the Pharisees is because they're all at table, but they're not the only ones at table. Along at table is every ne'er-do-well that Jesus can find. Tax collectors and prostitutes and prisoners and smelly people and homeless people and refugees, and they're all sitting at the table. And of course, the Pharisees are murmuring to themselves, and they're saying, you know, if he knew who he was sitting with, he's sitting with sinners. You know, I don't think Jesus ever thought of himself sitting with sinners. Fallen daughters, fallen sons, people in trouble, people who have difficulty getting up, yeah. But they were still, he's eating with the daughters and the sons of God. And so he's going to address a story to the Pharisees to see if they can get it. And by the way, he's addressing that story to us. The Pharisees were the good people. They're the ones who followed the law. The Pharisees were the people who were in church. We're the people in church. So this story is for us. This story is for me. This story is for all of us. And the Pharisees are having a real difficult time because he's kowtowing to these lowlives. And he tells this story of two brothers. One was a really hard-working, good kid, the older brother. And then he had a younger brother. And his younger brother comes up to his father and he says, "Dad, drop dead." That's basically what he's saying. He says, "Give me my share of the inheritance." Well, when do you get the inheritance? You get the inheritance after you're dead. I'm not going to wait for you to die. I want it now. I want it now. And so the father gives him his half of the inheritance, and he trundles off to a far distant city, and he is happy as a pig in mud, because pretty soon he's going to be a pig in mud. Yeah? He's got everything he's wanting. He's spending money lavishly on all kinds of stuff. He's becoming addicted to that wonderful lifestyle that only money can buy. You know, George Carlin once says, every addiction, especially addiction to drugs or to whatever you're addicted to, sex, whatever it is at the beginning, it's almost all pleasure and very little pain. And then pretty soon it becomes half and half pleasure, half pain. And then when the drug takes over you and it owns your life, it's all pain and no pleasure. And you have to keep on doing more and more of it until it sucks out your life. That's exactly what's happening to him. His life is being sucked out. And he finds himself that when a famine breaks out in great hunger, and he's looking around and he's seeing that there other people are eating and he's not, he's starving to death. And then he, Luke tells us, comes to his senses. Comes to his senses. The 12-step people tell us, until you hit bottom, you're not going to come to your senses. When you hit bottom, there's nowhere else to go but up. And as he comes to his senses, he has a thought. He says, I've really treated my father like trash. I'm gonna do a new deal. I'm gonna turn around. I'm gonna do better. I don't even deserve to be called his son. And so he's practicing his little speech. He says, oh, I don't deserve to be called your son. Treat me like when because the hired hands, they've got food. They've got a place to stay in the outside house, in the worker's house. Oh, they're not in the house of the father, but they're outside, and at least they're eating. How many workers in my father's place have more than enough to eat? So I'm going to say, oh, Father, I no longer deserve to be called your son. I'm no longer your son. Treat me like one of your hired workers. And he's practicing his little speech. And he's coming home. And then Luke tells us the father sees him a long way off. And what does he do? He runs to his son. Now, excuse me, if you are an ancient Israelite, if you are the head of a household, no one goes running to the other. They come to you. You sit on your throne, and if they are repentant enough, you may forgive them. That's not the Abba of Jesus. That's not the Hound of Heaven. That's not your God. No matter what you've done, no matter how big your sin, no matter how low you've gotten, no matter how terrible your addiction, he's coming after you. Why? He wants you alive. He wants you in the house. And so he runs to his son, and the son starts the speech, oh, Father, I've sinned against heaven, and I've sinned against you, and the father's going to hear none of that. Quick, come over here. Put a ring on his finger and a robe on him. Put bells on his toes and new sandals, and kill the fattened calf, because we are going to party hardy. This son of mine was dead. He's come back to life. Let's get this show on the road. And there is rejoicing. Because he was dead. Now he's alive. And did he earn it? No. It's all gift. It's all gift. That's the good news. That's the part that's too hard to believe. We believe that we have a transactional God, and we think if transactions work really well in the business world, it works the same way in the spiritual world. It does not. It does not. Because God is all gift, all mercy. There is no vindictiveness in God. There is no anger in God. There is no punishment in God. Well, the punishment that looks like punishment, we put on ourselves. The hell that we live in is the hell that we create for ourselves. And we're going to find someone in hell in just a moment. Because while the party's going on, the older brother's out in the field. The Pharisee, the good guy, working his pants off, worked for his father day and night. And I got to tell you, the first time I read this gospel, that I understood it, I was about 14 years old, and I'm going, this stinks. This ain't fair, good Pharisee that I am. Because I've always been a good Pharisee, man. You keep the law, and the law will keep you. I followed the rules like nobody else followed the rules. I was safe and sound. I did everything good. But my brother Joe, he's in heaven now, so Joe, forgive me. But my brother Joe, well, he was so lazy that he would sweep the floor sitting down. And he moved the chair a little more and sweep some more. And I can remember saying, Ma, tell Joe to do his part. I'm doing my part. And he's getting as much ice cream afterwards as I'm going to get. It's not fair. Well, that's not fair, because he's coming in from work and he's going, what's all the commotion? What's all the noise? What's going on here? And they said, well, your brother's back safe and sound, and your father's killed the fatted lamb, and now they're partying because he was dead and now he's alive. And he's just going crazy. It's not fair. It's not fair. Now his father goes outside. God keeps seeking. He is not going to give up on us. He's locked himself outside the house. Now remember, the house is where everything is, where we belong. It's where everything comes together. It's the place of the banquet. It's heaven. It's the kingdom. And he's outside the house, but the father goes out of the house and he starts to plead with him. And now he's going to give a reason, chapter and verse, why he's so angry. For years now I have slaved for you. I have been your servant. Never one of your orders have I ever disobeyed. And this son of yours goes out and squanders his inheritance on prostitutes. Nobody ever said anything about that in the beginning. And he's got him down cold. He belongs in hell, and you've put him in heaven. How dare you? I've earned that right. I've done it right. And what does the father say? My son. My son. He's his son. You are with me always. And everything I have is yours. Everything. But we had to rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and now has come back to life. Now the question is, with all that anger, with all that resentment, with all that fury, with all that judgment, is he going in? Now this gospel is for me. We are the good people. The prodigals, they're not in church this morning. They're sleeping in. The question for us, are we going to find ourselves out? Because the one who does it completely wrong gets it right. And the one who thinks he's doing everything right, who's earning his salvation, who is meriting heaven, you owe me, look how much I've worked, is finding himself outside. It is a mystery beyond our comprehension how this God could be so good and wants everybody inside. We don't know if he's going to come in. We don't know. And he's asking us too, are we going to come in? Or are we going to get caught in our own resentments? Because there's a lot of people right now that we can really resent. There's a lot of people that we can really look our noses down at. There's a lot of people that are pretty smelly and outside of the mainstream. It doesn't take much for us to get caught in that exact same trap. As a matter of fact, we've got a father right now who has done just exactly what the father in the gospel has done. And we're not quite sure we like what he's doing. The father who's doing that right now, his name is Francis. You may have heard of him. He's the Pope. And Francis looks at the poor and the disenfranchised, and those who felt themselves locked out forever, those who are divorced and thinking that they're never going to get back to where they belong. Francis is saying, oh no, there's room in the house. Come on back. Those who are prisoners, he goes to the jail and washes the feet of women and Muslims. And then there are those who look at him and say, how dare you? How dare you demean yourself? stoop down to wash the feet of those who do not deserve it. We have followed the rules. We have done it right. And if we stay there, we will be locked out of the house. Why? Because we simply couldn't believe the gospel, the good news. What's the good news? All are invited. All are invited to come home.